Hello and welcome to the Chat Lounge. I'm Tuyun. In this episode of our special series, My Expat Life in Rural China, I have a special co-host, my colleague, Zenele Pearl Buthelezi from South Africa. Hello, Pearl. Thank you for joining me this time.
Hi, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to our discussion today. We have great guests, and I hope we have a lot to talk about because they are from South Africa too.
Indeed, your compatriots Stephen and Ruth Green. We're sitting down in a coffee shop in Daoxian, or the Dao County, which is a small county in central China's Hunan province. Welcome to the chat, Ruth and Stephen.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, thank you.
Right. First, could you please introduce yourselves a little bit? You are the first guests we have on the show who have been living in China for no more than a decade, or less than a decade. So tell us what brought you to China in the first place.
So our story began in 2008 when I went to watch the Beijing Olympics with my mom. And that was the first time I came to China. And immediately just fell in love with the country and the people, and so I knew that I would be coming back one day. Then later on, after Stephen and I met, that was my main question. The main thing I wanted to know is, will Stephen come with me to China?
And what's the answer to that question?
Well, the answer is you can say that I came to China for love.
All right. Well, that's very romantic. And Stephen, your story, or what's behind it? You just came here after following Ruth, right?
I mean, that's the simple answer.
The whole thing.
But I've always loved history and culture, and China has an abundance of both. And the history of the country is incredibly long, and so I've also traveled a lot, and so it was no problem for me to come to a new place, learn a new language, learn a culture, learn a history. It was an exciting adventure for me. And so the main reason was Ruth, but there were lots of bonuses.
Right.
Wow, Ruth, you and I share a similar story because I also first came to China in 2011 for work, and I fell in love with the country. But I'm curious to know, what was the adjustment like for you guys when you first arrived here to live permanently or for a longer period?
Is that adjustment to Daoxian or Dao County or China in general?
Well, China in general as well as Dao County itself, because you've lived here now for a prolonged period of time, right?
So we spent our first year studying Chinese in the city of Guilin, which is it's not quite the level of Shanghai, but there are a lot of expats there, and it's more cosmopolitan. So that wasn't too bad. I think maybe like some food adjustments, but like a lot of our friends could speak English. We had an English-speaking group with students from the university, and so I'm still friends with. Well, Ruth's actually best friend is still from those days. So that was fine. When we came to Dao County, our Chinese improved very fast. It was like the university of life.
Because nobody can speak English here.
Yeah, because if we wanted to buy rice, we couldn't say rice in English. We had to buying things, getting around. There are not a lot of people around here who can speak English, and we were and now are still the only Western foreigners in Dao County.
Then what made you decide to settle down in this small county instead of some big metropolitans like Shanghai, Beijing, or Guangzhou? Not many Chinese even know this place.
Yeah, so when we were in Guilin and studying, we were looking around for work, and we were looking all over. So we hadn't decided at that time that we wanted to be in a small place. And we saw an ad posting online, and our now colleague, he was talking about our county, and he used words like it's a forgotten city. We want to bring hope. We want to build bridges to create opportunity in this place. We want to elevate the city and create more exposure for students. So yeah, we kind of had two options. The one option was go to a big city and do what everyone else is doing and earn a bit more money, or come to a smaller city, do something new, but have, I suppose, greater impact. Be a part of creating something new, bringing hope, building those bridges that he was talking about. And so for us, we thought we would rather have impact than money, I suppose. Not that we don't, we're not living here for free, but that was more important to us.
Yeah, I think also the pace of life in the bigger cities is very, very fast. The pressure is quite intense, and so we really wanted to come to a place where we would be able to build good relationships with people, to build deep friendships and really get to know people. And so because it is smaller here, we thought there would be better opportunities just to build stronger relationships, learn the culture in a deeper way, and become more integrated into the community.
Then, talking about the pace of life, I mean, we both come from the same region in South Africa, or all three of us actually come from the same region in South Africa, which is on the east coast of the country. And life there is considered to be very slow. So do you think it's similar? It's a similar pace? That's why you settled quickly here or adjusted to the life here?
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, I can see that. And from being here for the past few days, I think I've been enjoying, the experience here, yeah.
But you enjoy the lifestyle here, but there is another concern, which is there might not be so many people hoping to learn English. But does that, or are you concerned that it may not support your business here in Daoxian?
I think, one thing that I've noticed living in China is that Chinese parents are incredibly committed to the education of their children. Like, they're willing to sacrifice a lot. And I think that fact has, I think two things. So one is it's made it easier. I think in lots of other countries we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing in a remote place. I think China, and particularly the devotion of Chinese parents, is unique in that way.
But maybe a bit of background on how you got into teaching or the education sector here in China. I mean, just looking at the background, where you come from in South Africa, what's your background and how you made the shift here?
So at university I studied linguistics, so I've always been really interested in language in particular, and so from there I also did a CELTA certification, and Stephen has also since done one. So we both had that to start with, and we thought it would be a good starting point for us to branch out into different areas later.
Right.
Yeah, so Ruth's majors were psychology and linguistics, and then my majors were psychology and English literature. So we both have a language, English sort of, part of our parts of our degrees. But I think for us it's also a question of what do we have to offer and where is the need. So when we talk about like with our colleagues about bringing hope, is we wanted to help raise the level of education, and there's not great access to English teachers, and that's something unique that we can do. And so it made sense.
But when this COVID pandemic came, like in 2020, did you ever think about leaving this country during that period? What made you decide to stay?
Yeah, to be honest, we didn't really think about going home, although obviously we missed our families and wanted to be with them through that season of history. We also knew that if we left China, we probably wouldn't be able to come back in, because at that time the borders were closing. And so, yeah, because this place has become our home and these people here have become our community, we didn't want to be separated for an extended period of time. And also with our business here, we didn't want to leave our colleagues in a difficult situation, because, yeah, without us teaching English, the business would have suffered a lot as well. So
at that time, we were the only English teachers at the centre. So since we've got a number of now Chinese English teachers, and so we're involved, and we still teach classes, but we also train them, so we're involved in their training. And that in large was in response to COVID. So we were shut down for a little bit, but fortunately Dal County was, we didn't have any lockdown or anything here. So obviously there were traveling restrictions, but we were, yeah, incredibly blessed that the city itself wasn't locked down. And so, yeah, we actually saw a bit of growth in our centre at that time, but we needed to expand, and foreigners were not available.
Right.
And so, yeah, we've started working with local Chinese English teachers.
Yeah, like you said, some of your expat friends were leaving at that time.
Yeah.
And what gave you this confidence, say that I can be the one who can survive or can continue with our journey here?
I wouldn't say it was so much confidence as
commitment.
Yeah, commitments. Like we, with our colleagues, I mean, they are close friends as well, but we with them had committed to do something. And so, my Chinese name is Lu No, and so Lu is Lu Bo the Lu, and I know a little bit. So part of the story is that he's like very faithful to his friends. Am I right? So like he'll go back for his friends, and then the No is from the promise. So when my friends gave me the name, they were like, "You are faithful to your promise." So like we had committed to do something.
Let's move on to your teaching in China. What have you been teaching the students? Can you give us some specific examples, please?
So, yeah, it's interesting times because things have changed and the government focus has also shifted. So when we started just as an English training center. So we, us and our colleagues, we had other plans and things, but we knew that the foundation of the business would be simple English lessons for 3 to 12-year-olds. But more recently, the government has, I want to say, tried to create equal opportunity in terms of education. And so there have been some restrictions around training centers, and particularly training for subjects, school subjects. So that would include English and maths and Chinese. And so we've had to shift our focus a bit. But for us personally, we've been very encouraged because living here, interacting with students, we've noticed that the things the government wants to focus on, things like mental health, life skills, sport, general life skills like cooking and things like that. Those are things that we, living here and interacting with the students, we started thinking, wow, we'd love to do this kind of thing, we'd love to do this kind of course. And now the government's creating more of a focus on those things. And so we've started to introduce some courses that cater to that more recently.
Yeah, so we've started a new course that we've called Adventure Club. And so far we've done 5 different activities. We started with knot tying, then we had ultimate frisbee and woodwork, And then most recently, we've just done first aid and outdoor cooking.
So you said your focus has shifted a little bit due to the education policies that the government has adopted. Would that be more convenient to teach the students, or have you found any challenges during that process? I understand, Stephen, prior to your coming to China, you were also engaged in similar teaching, right?
Yeah, so I was a youth worker. So I worked for a non-profit organization in schools, and did similar classes in schools. I think to answer the initial question is, it's definitely much more inconvenient because when you teach English, you teach out of a textbook. There's so many resources that you can use. People before have done wonderful things, but when it comes to like the courses we're doing now, I think there are materials and we do use them, but also they need to be catered to the Chinese market. And so with the new courses, it is a lot more work, but I hope, I'm confident that ultimately it's much more impactful.
Then do you think it's a kind of a good transformation or a policy shift, or do you think or maybe the previous is better to you for you? The education policy.
Yeah.
You mean for us or for students?
For the kids.
For China.
For China and for the kids.
I mean, I think personally, I think it's a wonderful thing that the government is starting to do, because they have seen the needs of the students and they are responding with policies that are very supportive and helpful to the growth of the students.
And they've seen beyond just informational growth, like growth in knowledge, that also children grow in other ways. They learn social skills, they learn to work as a team, they learn how to lose well. If you never learn how to lose well, like to lose a competition, you can get into the workplace and say your first interview you get rejected. That can really break someone. If they've not learned, actually in life you don't always win. Like you might get rejected, and so these skills are crucial for students to carry them into the real world. And so I think ultimately and if things are implemented well, then it's a great policy change. It is inconvenient for us, but for China, I think it's great.
And in this community, what kind of changes are you observing? I mean, having introduced this new, course or new subject or training for the students that you deal with?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a good response from parents so far. They've definitely not experienced the type of teaching that we want to bring. And so, it's been good to just raise awareness of different types of teaching, different content, and different areas of development that children need to be supported in.
Well, one thing, just a bit of a story. We had an ultimate frisbee sports competition tournament, and the parents, they loved it, way more than the kids. Just
I bet.
And I remember one of the moms, I wanted to have a video camera to record her. She was on the side, shouting, encouraging the kids, and it's just, it can bring families together. Because if a child is studying maths, obviously they need to, right? It's part of life, they need to. But it's hard for parents to be on the side. You can't go into a kid's room and be like, wow, you're studying so well. And so it just brings a different parent-child interaction and a different way to encourage students and to bring families together and for them to grow.
Can I say it's more in line with international practices, because that's what you have back in South Africa, right?
Yeah, South Africa is interesting. I would say the China's schooling system is much more say equal. South Africa is the standard of education varies greatly. So we were incredibly fortunate. Ruth and I, we went to private schools, both of us. So the tuition is very high, but the quality of education is great. And so it is holistic, and we experienced sport and cultural activities. I was part of the school choir and had a band in school. So, but that's not every South African's experience. And I would say the majority of South Africans, it's not their experience. But we were incredibly blessed. And so we want to, take that and share that with others.
You see it a little bit different here in China, because the kids, they're supposed to have this 9-year compulsory education, right?
Yeah.
Then would it bring, cause any extra burden to the students with those extracurricular activities?
Well, I've taught here in China, I've taught kids between the ages of 3 and 12 at an educational center in Shanghai, to be more specific. And what I noticed there was that kids were very much burdened by a lot of extracurricular activities that they had to do. And whenever they reached our center, they were very tired because it was after school and after many other lessons that they had to take. And so I'm curious about the situation here in the small town. Is there any similarities? Do you find that kids do have a lot of extracurricular activities that they do as parents try to mold these young kids into, I guess, successful adults in the future?
Yeah, I think there are definitely similarities. Obviously, the parents want the best for their children, so they want to give them every opportunity they can. So we have found that kids are very busy. And so with our Adventure Club, we are not wanting to add to the burden, but we rather want to provide a space where kids can learn through play, and it can be a space where they are more relaxed, can feel like they are able to use creative abilities, be curious about things, and learn in a way that is less stressful.
And so parents, are they more receptive to this way of teaching?
I mean, I think we need, we have conversations with parents, but the parents that are part of our course have enjoyed it, and they've enjoyed being part of the course. So once a month we have a parent and child lesson, and so they come and join their kids. I think, like Ruth was saying, like if kids are going to go to a center anyway, we want our center to be a center of play, not because that's what they're missing. And so we really try to make, obviously they're still learning, but there's a difference between like learning from a book and learning by using your hands, running around, playing
together with other kids.
Yeah, together with other kids, and playing like constructed games, that have rules and things.
Then have you found any uniqueness about Chinese students when it comes to their learning ability or capability, especially when compared with South African kids?
I mean, one thing that I found surprising, it's not so much the students, but the amount of time students spend at school. So we would finish school at maybe like 2 p.m.
Right.
And in primary school, often you finished like 12 p.m. you would finish school. But here students stay at school for a lot longer.
Right.
And so I'm really encouraged again that the government now wants to use that afternoon time for things like sport and play and different kinds of hands-on learning, because I think that's missing. But I do find the students very studious, and particularly as they get older, they are very studious and conscientious of the need to study and their own futures.
You're right about that. Once the bell rings, we are just bolting out of the school in South Africa.
Yeah.
But there are also other schools that do provide extra learning time, especially for kids that are in matric, which is our final year in the schooling system of South Africa, or what you call grade 12. From grade 10 actually to grade 12, we find that those kids, they do have extra lessons, or they have what they call camps, because they are trying to improve on their final exams. So while there is a difference between China and South Africa, where in China maybe the whole, I guess, from grade 1 to grade 12, there is that, you know, focus on actually going to school and having extra lessons. Back home, there are times where kids will be allowed to have some time off, whereas for kids in grade 10 to 12, some of them will actually be required to take extra lessons and go to camps, winter camps, and so on, just to improve on their school. And so maybe shifting to this question now also, you are here and you are giving the kids this new type of learning, education, as well as the parents, as you say, you incorporate them into this learning process. Have you seen the changes, especially with life skills, you know, the changes that this brings to the community? Are there any signs that you are noticing right now?
Yeah, I think the difference between that type of learning and the traditional, very academic learning is that building life skills is a much longer process. So right now we are kind of at the beginning and mostly just creating awareness. And yeah, it's going to be a long process. A couple of years from now, we will hope to see the fruits of what we're starting now. Yeah.
But I think we have seen some things like more recently. So, for example, the first parent-students day we had, you know, a lot of the families, like only the mother, only the father will come, like they won't send both. But then one of the students, you know, they enjoyed it so much, and the parents were telling us that he came home and he said, okay, next time, both of you need to come. Mom and dad both need to come. And so we have seen things like that where yeah, it's encouraged inter-family interaction, and I think inter-family play, which is like, you don't think about it, that like parents need to play with their kids, but it's really important, I think, for a child's development, that they get to play with their parents. Yeah.
You all mentioned this, you know, Chinese kids may be more focused on, or they can focus their attention for a much longer time and when in school. But what about the, you know, outside the school? You've been a lot of teaching them a lot of outdoor activities, like bodybuilding. So physically speaking, are they less competitive, or mentally more, or weaker, or emotionally, you know, more fragile, anything like that?
I would say physically we can see that, as all kids do, Chinese kids have lots of energy. But we have noticed they don't have an understanding of how to use their energy. And so, yeah, how to control their movements, how to be disciplined in how they move.
So to use an example, like when we did Frisbee, like the Frisbees were going all over the place.
Right.
It's like crazy. But like they need to get it out. But you know, I think like South African kids, because they are used to it, and their bodies have learned the movements, particularly with sport, is those kind of things are a lot more like controlled. But it's part of their development and learning. I think like emotionally, so I said two big things is, one is learning how to lose, you know, because you know, with Chinese kids, score is very individual. Like you have your own score, and if you improve your score, then you've won. But like I'm learning like to work as a team, but also like to lose as a team. Yeah, it's not a skill that they naturally would have. And so yeah, we've had to deal with kids being very upset, like when their team loses, or you know, they blame other members on their team. But again, that's part of development that they need, because in the workplace, you know, you're going to have a team project. Well, then you got to get it on with your team, and if you don't, then you're going to have a problem with your boss. And so yeah, I mean, there are those kind of things, but the kids need to experience it to develop the skills.
Right.
Yeah.
Then, Stephen, have you noticed any difference between, you know, the physical strength of left behind kids and those who have their parents by their side? Because, you know, in small towns in like Daoxian, there are a lot of parents who go out for better income and their kids are just studying here by themselves.
Yeah, often left with grandparents or other family. In terms of physical strength, we've not noticed a big difference. The big difference really is in like emotional development, social skills, emotional skills. I think some of them, it depends how supportive the rest of their family is, but they can struggle in school academically as well, because they don't have that support and encouragement from their parents.
Indeed.
So yeah, we have, so more on the emotional academic side, we've noticed that they fall behind compared to children who have their parents around.
Yeah, I mean, with us both having psychology backgrounds, we are very aware of the role that mothers and fathers play in a child's development. And so, yeah, it's quite easy for us to see the kids who have parents and the kids who don't.
Then what about in South Africa? Is it like a similar situation there?
Yeah, so the left behind kids phenomenon, it's not unique to China.
Yeah.
So in South Africa, it's also a problem. I think one thing that encourages me is that, you know, we have been talking about the government's shift in policy, and I think a lot of that benefits the left behind kids, because when you start bringing the you know, social learning and mental health, those kind of things, you start bringing them into the school. I think those are the kids who really benefit the most, and because they don't have the parental support. But I would say, I do just want to say that nothing beats parental support. Like, parents are number one, that's the best.
Yeah.
But there are ways that left behind kids can be supported.
And from your experience, you've just touched on this, I know, but can you elaborate? Is there any other approach that can help kids that are left behind, to ensure that they're not that far behind the rest of the kids, especially kids in urban areas or cities? Have you realized that maybe there are other approaches that can be applied to help these kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think,
especially when you talk about, you know, looking at education, making sure that, you know, they do keep up, because grandparents can do only so far. They can only go so far. I mean, they are old, so
and a lot of them here are not educated.
That's another challenge, yes. And a similar situation in South Africa, you find that a lot of parents or grandparents that take care of grandkids, yes, they are uneducated, and so they put a lot of pressure on the teachers to educate their kids or teach them even discipline, you know, those kinds of things. So what have you learned, especially by dealing with the kids here and teaching them the life skills that you teach them? What works best?
Well, I think it's too early for us to know what is the best. But I think you need to simulate in some way that that parent interaction. So I would say the best would be parents training. So even though parents are away, there are ways that they can, you know, in these days we have WeChat and all of those, and do video calls and things. And I think with good, like, parents training, parents can be, trained to interact well with their kids, you know, in those ways, and then to have adult figures who are able to fill the gap, not replace, but to fill the gap when it comes to their parents, I think is also a good approach.
Well, I heard that those left behind kids well, some of them may do better, especially in outdoor activities, than their peers who have their parents by their side. I don't know if you've noticed such a phenomenon, and I'm wondering what's behind that. Is it a
no? That is
yeah, especially
yeah.
when they running outside,
Yeah.
they bring themselves out, and it gives them more confidence, right?
Yeah, we have one kid in particular in our class. He's a bit older than some of the other kids, but he is very, very good in terms of hand-eye coordination, like
Right.
body intelligence. And I think that is because sometimes left behind kids need to do more things for themselves. And so, yeah, they have to have that practice. And at the same time, they are more free to run around outside
Yes.
and don't have as much pressure to always be inside studying or doing something more academic. So in that respect, yes, we have seen kids who are more advanced physically.
Right. So what you're doing and what you're trying to focus more on in your future plan actually may help, may be more helpful to those left behind kids. So what would be your yeah.
Can I just say something
Sure.
that's interesting in
Yeah.
terms of left behind is a lot of parents now, so even though the parents are still, they are around, but they are children of left behind, so they themselves are left behind children.
Right.
Yeah, and so there is a...
They haven't had good role models
Yeah.
to learn how to parent from. So in a way, they are trying to navigate this very difficult challenge of raising children without having had an example to learn from themselves.
Yeah, of their own parents
Yeah.
raising them.
So do they turn to you for like a help or?
Yeah, some have. We've not done anything formally. So
Okay.
just in sharing life with people, we have had conversations that have been received very well. Also, strangely enough, conversations about marriage and like how to have a fulfilling, good, loving marriage.
Right.
We've found that we've had, been able to just share life and by doing that help some people, which has been very rewarding.
Yeah, just share your own experiences
Yeah,
would be
exactly.
helpful, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
So we don't have children yet, but we do have some or small amounts of experience in marriage. And yeah, we know that marriage has a huge impact on a child's development as well. If the child can grow up in a space where there is love between parents, that will change how the child grows up as well.
Looking at the development in the education system here in China and all the steps that the government continues to take to, I guess, adjust and improve the system, do you think we'll ever be able to break the cycle here in China of the left behind children, where we no longer refer to this phrase, especially when we see also the generational left behind cycle that's been created or that has been experienced? Do you think we'll be able to beat this, I guess, this trend?
I think it's our hope that we can do that and that Stephen and I can be a very small part of that process.
I think also the problem is it's more than just the education. So it's also like it's also
about the urbanization process.
So like parents won't go out if they don't have to. They won't go. A lot of parents want to be around, and that's part of our business partners and us. We when we started and still we talked about hope. Part of the hope is that we want there to be more opportunities here, because some parents, they move for education, so like they're better education opportunities in other cities, and so the family gets split up not because of work but because of education. So if we can raise the level of education, then families won't be split up. So I think it's also about opportunities.
Equal opportunities are provided for.
I have one, I guess, it's a question that has been, bothering me a little bit for some time. So let me raise it here. about meddling parents and grandparents, because this is what I noticed when I was teaching. The grandparents will be out there looking through the windows as we're teaching kids.
That's what Chinese grandparents do.
And they'll be shouting through the windows if you do the wrong thing as a teacher, or the child does the wrong thing. They'll be shouting through, or they'll be waiting for you at the door as a teacher. Even though I didn't understand Chinese, they'll be like saying things. I'm like, oh, okay, let me get my assistant to come and translate here or deal with the situation. So is this something that you have noticed with parents or grandparents?
We have witnessed this, and I think I have a lot of empathy or sympathy rather for the grandparents, because their childhood, they grew up through a very difficult time in history, and so I think they are even more passionate to make sure that their grandchildren take every opportunity available to them. So I think it's out of love that we see grandparents being very strict sometimes actually with the grandkids, because they just love them and want the best for them.
Yeah, I think, I mean, at the end of the day, everyone needs education, right?
Yeah.
It's wrong to think that like once you finish school, like you don't need to learn anymore. And so our hope is that that we can have conversations with everyone, grandparents, parents, and kids, and that everyone can learn and get on better. But what you say is 100% right. And like the open parents-child classes, like sometimes the grandparents will come to those, and it's not us that the grandparents will shout at. It's their grandchildren, and we have to go to the grandparents and say, it's okay, it's just a game. Like it's okay if he like drops the ball, it's fine. It's like.
Apart from the grandparents, what would you say was the biggest challenge you've already encountered during your teaching here?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say the focus on academic learning and scores. Obviously, those things are exceptionally important, and especially in a country like China where competition is so fierce, there's so many people vying for the same spot. But at the same time, that doesn't negate the need for other areas of education. So things like social development, emotional development, mental health.
Right.
And so I think for me, I would say the biggest challenge is just shifting attention a little bit away from the score and onto a more holistic view of education.
What about Stephen?
Yeah, I think Ruth's answers is I would have to agree with her, and I've been really encouraged. When we first started, every other day some parent would ask us about score, and how much will my child's score improve, and how much will my child's score improve, and we're finding now more and more as parents understand that we offering something different, and a child's learning is more than score. Those questions come up less and less, and that to us has been very encouraging. So yeah, I would have to agree.
Yeah, I mean with that as well, like a score is much easier there's a lot more evidence that you can gain. So a score is a much more tangible thing, like you can
count a score, you can't count emotion.
Yeah, so every week you can have test results, but you can't measure as easily how well a child is developing emotionally or how well they are learning to interact in terms of communication skills or that type of thing. It's harder to communicate the value of those type of things because you can't immediately point to a result or an improvement.
Then let's move on to your future plan here. Over the past 4 or 5 years here in Daoshan, or in the Dao County, what's the biggest change you've observed about this place?
So when we first arrived in Dao County, there was one KFC. Now there are 2 KFCs and a McDonald's.
Right.
It's just to say that it feels like we are being noticed. And the more that happens, the more places like McDonald's, because they're providing jobs, they're creating opportunities, yeah, it grows our community. We think of this as our community, and so yeah, that's for us. That's really encouraging. That's yeah, it's growing and developing, and yeah, it's good.
And I think, you know, smaller communities or areas leave a greater impact on people when you compare it to bigger cities. And so I'm interested to know, what impact has this community had on you and vice versa?
Well, you'd have to ask, you're asking the wrong people for our impact on the community. I mean, we hope that our impact, our legacy, as if we could say that, would be that families would be closer. That yeah, the value and importance of good relationships in the family, that would be left behind, and people would learn that. In terms of how we've been impacted, I think just yeah, I mean, we've learned so much about people, about the culture. We've made wonderful friends who've opened up to us and allowed us to share our life with them, and they share their life with us. And so, yeah, we've felt incredibly blessed that we have these close people that we can, despite the cultural differences, right? We're from almost opposite sides of the world. That we can have these deep relationships and live together.
Yeah, you mentioned some fast food chain opening here, and here we are sitting inside a coffee shop, right? And there are burgeoning, blooming coffee business here in this town, actually. So what's your future plan in China, and would you consider probably moving to other places or other cities?
Yeah, in terms of future plans, we've just started conversations with some local government officials from the publicity departments, and they've been speaking to us about mental health awareness,
right?
And they're wanting to do that in middle and high schools. So we are incredibly excited about that. So if in the future we can be involved in middle and high school mental health, but also I think setting up being a part of that after school training, and just saying, what do you want, how can we help, how can our experience and expertise help. We're really excited about that, and if that is something that works, then sure, take this and use it somewhere else in a different city. I don't know that we would move. We would be happy to train other people, but I mean, our hearts are really here in this place. So I think for us to move ourselves, obviously, if what we've imparted goes further, that's great, that's wonderful. But this is our home, so I don't know that we would move here.
So we have a dream, and we're not sure what it might end up looking like, but we would really love to work together with the government to set up places of learning. Maybe you could call them family learning centers, where whole families could be equipped with skills that would help them to thrive in every area of life.
Yeah, so like if there was a young married couple, for example, who they as married couples do, they're struggling, then there's a place they can go, there's someone they can talk to, you can talk them through maybe marriage problems. If there's parents who are struggling with kids, and how do I discipline my kid, how do I get my kid to learn, that there's a place and someone they can talk to, and also a place where their parents can talk to kids, and that discussion is facilitated, and also maybe kids who they're struggling with stress and social issues, that there's a place they know, okay, there's going to be someone here who's going to listen to me. So yeah, we're hoping that we can actually move away from teaching English to, I would say, maybe coaching families would be a way to say it.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what we would really love to do.
And we also have noticed that in a lot of the small villages, there are schools that are now abandoned because students have gone to learn in bigger cities. And so to us, it just seems like there's so much potential to create these spaces where families can learn together.
In those abandoned schools.
Yeah, and so if we could use those schools to create those environments, to us that would be one of the most exciting things we could do.
That's a beautiful aspiration, and hope you can every success with your plans here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last bit, your messages to those probably your countrymen and other foreigners who want to come to live and work in China. Maybe we start with Pearl.
I would say people need to consider coming to remote areas in China, smaller villages, instead of thinking first about bigger cities, because there's a whole lot to learn from smaller villages and cities. Like myself, I just learned something about an important figure in Chinese history and literature, Zhou Dunyi. He's a philosopher, an ancient times philosopher, and that was very interesting for me to learn that he hailed from this part of the country. And there's a whole lot more to learn in smaller villages. Let me just say that.
Indeed, he's from the Song Dynasty, which is some of 1,000 years ago, right? And Ruth, please.
Yeah, I would say to people from South Africa that the big cities are immediately appealing. When you see them, it's very obvious all of the good aspects about the city. But I would say to people from home, look a bit deeper, because the smaller places you're going to find things just as appealing, just as beautiful, and just as worthwhile discovering in small places.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Stephen, please.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I want to help my fellow countrymen. So I would say, think about what you want. If you just want to make money, then sure, the big city is appealing. But if you want to learn culture, if you want to learn history, you know, a great thing about a smaller place is that you are put in the middle of it, and you have to live in it. You know, in a big city, I would say it's too easy, because there's so many foreigners. It's too easy to just be with the other foreigners and actually not get to know the country and the people. But when you come to a smaller place, you have to, because they're your neighbors, and if you want friends, well, you have to make Chinese friends. And sure, maybe there are challenges with that, but for us at least, in the long run, it's so much more rewarding.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a big reason, at least for me, why I've fallen in love with China and where we are.
That's beautiful. And with that, we wrap up our chat. Many thanks to Stephen and Ruth Green for sharing your stories with us. If you have any comments on the topic or the show, please feel free to message us. You can find us on all major podcast platforms, or send us an email to radio@cgtn.com. I'm Tuyin together with Zenele Pearl Buthelezi. Thank you for being with us. We'll have more chat next week.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.